He is born in Kufa in the time of the Tabi'in, although it's almost certain that he meets some of the Sahaba, so he's considered to be a Tabi'i himself. Whether he actually narrates from the Sahaba is disputed, but he certainly meets some of the very old companions of the Holy Prophet. Brought up in Kufa, which is the biggest, most significant city in Iraq at the time, spends most of his life there. We're not entirely sure what his father did, but it seems fairly sure that he was a merchant, reasonably well off. Again, if you accept the story, which most of the historians present, of his grandfather being a kind of bondsman taken in captivity after the capture of Kabul, it's indicative of how slaves and others could make good in this new, enormous, very commercially active imperial civilization. But in any case, it's clear that he must have been a good Muslim, because we know that Abu Hanifa learns the Quran at an early time. And there were family stories about what they did when they first came to Kufa. One of the stories was that Abu Hanifa's grandfather, on the Persian feast of Nowruz, would send Persian sweets to Ali ibn Abi Talib, who of course was headquartered at the city of Kufa. When he was young, كان يختلف إلى السوق قبل أن يختلف إلى العلماء. When he was young, he used to go to the market before he went to the scholars. And in fact, he starts off as a merchant with a fairly successful shop in the bazaar in Kufa, and he remains in business all of his life. And this is one of the interesting dimensions of Abu Hanifa's career. But he also, in an early age, learns the Quran, and part of his devotion, his particular ibadah, is a very, very strong attachment to Allah's book. So it's said, at least by some of his fervent admirers, that he used to read the whole Quran through 60 times during the month of Ramadan. And the tradition is that there were 4 Imams who were known to recite the entire Quran in one rak'ah. So this would be presumably in a tahajjud prayer. To do it properly, you really needs about 7 hours. And those are Uthman bin Affan, Tamim ad-Dari, Sa'id bin Jubair, and Abu Hanifa. 4 people who in Islamic history have the reputation of reading the whole Quran in a single rak'ah. And the Quran is really at the center of his specific type of taqwa. But back to Kufa. Kufa is an interesting place. It's not like Imam Malik being brought up in Medina, where everything is Islamic and the Prophet's fragrance is everywhere. Kufa is different. It's a new city, garrison town, been established by the conquerors, and it's a melting pot for everybody and everything. If you think of the map of the ancient world, Iraq really is at the center of everything. This is the land of Sinbad the sailor. They're trading throughout the world. They're going to China, Central Asia, North Africa. Iraq is the very center of civilization, and the beginning of civilization is Mesopotamia, after all, which had the first cities that we know of. So everything is coming in there. There's Greek philosophy knocking around. There's Persian medicine. Christianity of many, many, many different kinds in Iraq, particularly Nestorian Christianity, which now hardly exists, but then was very important. Nestor was the patriarch of Constantinople, who developed the idea of Christ having 2 separate natures, the human nature and the divine nature, like 2 minds contemplating each other in the single person. And the other churches of the East are called Monophysites, the Copts, the Jacobites, and so forth, who say that no, there's just one mind with a human and a divine nature, but they're fused. But Iraq is the center for this Nestorian idea. And many, many Islamic sects as well. The Kharijites really are headquartered in southern Iraq. The Mu'tazilites kick off and really always have their center of operations in southern Iraq. And the Shia, although in this period they're not really a sect with their own distinctive doctrines, it's more like a political point of view, a political party, also have the greatest number of supporters in southern Iraq in this period. So this is really a very turbulent place. And of course Abu Hanifa, as a teenager, is hearing all of this stuff. And one of the attractive aspects of his personality is that he really wants to understand everybody's point of view and learns from them. He, as you can imagine, this is a city of argument. These are all people who are absolutely convinced of their religious rightness, and everybody's arguing. And if you've got a shop, it seems he was dealing in silk and linen garments, mainly women's clothes. Of course, everybody's going to be talking, and where do they talk? They talk in the bazaar, they talk in the shop. So he's hearing from an early age all of this chit-chat about every conceivable idea in existence. And he absorbs them, and he gets involved in the arguments because he's a Sunni, he's from a new Muslim family, so particularly passionate. He loves the Quran. He takes part in these debates in the shop and elsewhere, but he doesn't have enough knowledge really to be decisive. He's spending too much time in the market. And then there comes his great, as it were, conversion moment. It's said that once when he was walking through the Souq in Kufa, he encounters one of the great hadith scholars and jurists of the city of Kufa, who was Al-Imam Al-Sha'bi radiyallahu an. And Al-Sha'bi has been watching him and notes that he's always engaged in these, the 7th century, 8th century version of modern internet polemic. Everybody's arguing, but not everybody has much knowledge. So Al-Sha'bi tells him, عليك بالنظر إلى العلم ومجالسة العلماء فإني أرى فيك يقظة وحركة. He says you should look into scholarship and you should sit with the scholars because I can see in you there is a wakefulness and a motivation. So he takes this advice and increasingly leaves his shop in the hands of a partner or assistant who does most of the work there, and from then on tends to spend only part of his day there or visits it just to make sure that the business is going well. But he doesn't close it, and this is quite characteristic of Islam. Many of the scholars have had their own private income. One reason, of course, is to be independent. You don't need to take a purse of gold from a governor or a sultan if you have your own income. But also it seems partly because being right at the center of the market gave him an opportunity to think about law, about society, about ethics, and also it seems to serve others. He had the kind of mercantile piety that used a shop as an opportunity to serve society, to give a good price to the poor in particular, and to demonstrate honesty. And in fact, in our tradition we have some very beautiful works on what nowadays would be called business ethics, and very often the stories are about Imam Abu Hanifa and his shop. So for instance, he would never take an unfairly low price. There's an incident that had everybody in the bazaar chattering because a woman came in, a poor woman, to sell a robe, maybe it was a wedding dress or something, and she wanted 100 dirhams for it. And Imam Abu Hanifa looked at it and said 500 would be a good price. He wasn't engaging in sadaqah, it was actually the correct price for this garment. And she said, "Atahza'u bi? Are you laughing at me?" But he insisted that this was the correct price. That doesn't often happen in the real world of commerce, that somebody comes to you with a price and you say, no, actually I think I should be paying more. Would you sell a house or sell anything? Generally it tends to be the other way around, but this was his particular form of taqwa, a mercantile piety that is actually very important in our civilization. So there's other incidents that are narrated. On one occasion he sends off his assistant in order to deliver a garment to somebody who's ordered it, and tells the assistant, tell the purchaser that it's got a defect, it's torn in this corner, and don't take the money until you've shown it. The assistant delivers the garment, takes the money and goes back and said, I'm afraid I forgot to tell the purchaser about the defect. Abu Hanifa sends him back, but they can't find the purchaser. He's a traveller. And so Abu Hanifa immediately, of course, gives the price of the garment to the poor in sadaqah. So this is how to understand his life. He's right at the centre of society, and therefore the law school that comes out of his mind is something that is profoundly real and connected to the actuality of people's lives. You could say the same of the madhab of Imam Malik, of course. But Abu Hanifa is somewhat different in that his city is so cosmopolitan. There's so many different kinds of people. And he himself is actually part of the economic life, the economic establishment of his city. He seems to have made quite a good living. He was a prosperous person. There's nothing wrong with that in Islam. And was well known for cultivating a beautiful appearance. He always wore a valuable robe, used plenty of perfume. His sandals were always properly fastened and mended, unlike a lot of scholars at the time who wore patched robes and had sandals that were a kind of disaster area. Abu Hanifa was always smartly turned out. And in fact, he insisted that his students should also dress well. Once he saw a student who was really scruffy and told him, underneath this carpet there's some money, take it and smarten yourself up. And the student says, actually, I do have money. And Abu Hanifa still told him to improve the way that he looked. يَنْبَغِي لَكَ أَن تُغَيِّرَ حَالَكَ. He says to him, you should improve and change the way you look. حَتَّى لَا يَغْتَمَّ بِكَ صَدِيقُكَ. This is an interesting way of thinking. So that your friends don't feel bad about you. It's not that you're going to show off by looking cool in the souq. No, it's so that people don't feel sorry for you, that they're not concerned for you, that they don't think maybe they should be giving you money. If you've got money, you should be a smart person. Otherwise, others will be sad. Interesting way of looking at it. In any case, he's now taking Imam al-Sha'bi's advice to stay with the ulama. عَلَيْكَ بِمُجَالَسَةِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. But the issue is, which scholars? Everything is on the market, as it were, in the city of Kufa at the time, from extremist Shia to the Kharijites to a million kinds of other denominations, the Mu'tazilites, very active. So he's looking at the Sunni context. Like most converts in Islamic history, he tends to be strongly Sunni. And he sees that there's different sorts of Sunni circle, and he has to decide which one he's going to join. There's the circles of aqa'id, where people are developing arguments to defend the Sunni aqidah against the views of various people with strange new notions. There's the circles of hadith, where people are transmitting hadith, and these people are known for zuhud. And from these circles of hadith in Iraq, the movement known as tasawwuf emerges. Close symbiosis between the people of hadith and the people of tasawwuf, and in most cases they're actually the same people. If you look at the Hilyat al-Awliya of Abu Nu'aym al-Isfahani, Tabaqat al-Sufiyya of al-Sulami and others, you'll see the early hadith scholars are the first Sufis. But the third kind of circle is the circle of people who are talking about literature, because the Iraqis really love the Arabic language, they develop Arabic grammar, poetry, adab. That's going on as well. It's a very cultivated place. But the circle that he chooses to join is the circle of the people of fiqh. And that's not the same as studying hadith. A lot of people nowadays think that hadith and fiqh is the same thing, but absolutely not from the perspective of the Salaf. And you won't understand the emergence of fiqh and the whole structure of Islamic law unless you understand the difference between the people of hadith and the people of fiqh. Why does he make this choice? Why not hadith? We can see that he knows hadith very well, but he's also a practical person. He's constantly dealing with issues, legal issues, commercial issues, ethical issues, decisions, relationship issues even, in the marketplace. And he likes fatwa, he likes judgments, he likes ways in which religion can practically sort out people's problems. And he knew that hadith is just one dimension of fatwa. You can't give fatwas just by knowing the Quran and the hadith. And it's said that he made this decision to join the circle of the people of fiqh rather than hadith when he saw somebody who came to a hadith scholar with a question about a divorce case, actually unable to do anything, but just narrated a whole bunch of hadiths which needed interpretation but didn't give that person an answer. So he used to say, whoever learns hadith without fiqh is like a chemist who collects medicines without really knowing what to do with those medicines, and it's the doctor that has to come and use them. And the hadith student similarly doesn't know what to do with his hadith until the faqih, the person of fiqh, comes along and makes use of the hadith. He is concerned with the rectitude of Sunni belief, and his name is associated with one of the great traditions of Islamic theology, the Maturidi school, as it came to be known. And he is in that polemical world. He wants to uphold truth. He spends some time in Basra, which is a nearby city. It's the port of Iraq, where he's arguing with members of other sects. And there's a certain polemical dimension to what he writes. But in Kufa, he settles down to the study of fiqh. Sometimes the polemic continues. Sometimes people from other sects come into his mosque in order to dispute with him. And he uses logic and reason and his knowledge of hadith to debate with them, particularly the Khawarij and the extreme Shia who are present in Kufa at the time. But generally his way is to dislike disputation in aqa'id and in kalam. He saw the need for them, but he didn't like too much religious argy-bargy and argumentation. Partly because, like all of the great scholars, he saw the danger of the ego becoming involved. If I define my identity, the meaning of my life in terms of what I believe, then myself and my pride are very closely connected to my ability to vindicate what I believe and therefore to disprove what other people believe when they disagree with me. So the ego very easily gets tangled up in aqidah discussions. So there's a story about how he once saw one of his sons, Hamad, disputing doctrine. فَنَهَاهُ, and he forbade him to do that. And everybody said, رَأَيْنَاكَ تُنَاظِرُ فِي, we've seen you engaging in doctrinal disputes. وَتَنْهَانَا عَنْ, but you're telling us that we can't. فَقَالْ كُنَّا نُنَاظِرُ وَكَأَنَّا عَلَى رُؤُوسِنَا الطَّيْرِ مَخَافَةَ أَنْ يَزِلَّ صَاحِبُنَا. Listen to this answer, it's amazing. He said, we used to dispute people on issues of theology, and we used to do so with such humility that it was though there were birds sitting on our heads, in other words, sort of still with our heads down, a position of humility. مَخَافَةَ أَنْ يَزِلَّ صَاحِبُنَا, for fear that the person we were disputing with would make a mistake. وَأَنْتُمْ تُنَاظِرُونَ وَتُرِيدُونَ زَلَّةَ صَاحِبُكُمْ, but you people, you dispute with people hoping that they'll make a mistake. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَزَلَّ صَاحِبُهُ فَقَدْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَكْفُرَ صَاحِبُهُ, and whoever wants the person he's disputing with to make a mistake in aqidah effectively wants that person to become a kafir. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَكْفُرَ صَاحِبُهُ, and whoever wants the person he's sitting with to become a kafir, فَقَدْ كَفَرَ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَكْفُرَ صَاحِبُهُ, he is a kafir before the person he's debating with becomes a kafir. That's an amazing consequence of having no ego. It's very unusual in theology for people to engage in the defense of the truth without their own sense of self-worth becoming tied up with it. But this was Abu Hanifa's justification for getting into Sunni kalam and aqidah disputations. The condition has to be that you want to help the person that you're disputing with, rather than treating it as some kind of game of one-upmanship. Very difficult. Generally, as a result of that, the strong spirituality is that the Hanafi school in doctrine is characterized by a certain breadth and, you might say, tolerance. So, for instance, one of the characteristic points of the doctrine of his school is that Iman consists in what you believe in your heart and what you say you believe. That's the definition of Iman. And unlike Malik and Shafi'i and many of the others, he doesn't add, and you have to confirm it with what you do. In other words, Iman includes practice with your limbs. So the Maturidi school, which eventually comes out of Abu Hanifa's theology, actually doesn't even require professing with the tongue. They say you can be a mu'min and have Iman, even if it's just the belief in your heart. Even if you never say it and never act on the basis of it, you're still mu'min, you're a believer. So that's a very kind of open and affirming strategy, which is characteristic to this day of the Maturidi school. If you go to a Islamic theology faculty in Turkey or Bosnia where they're teaching the Maturidi Aqidah, this is the position that they will tell you. But he's focusing mainly on fiqh, and he likes to have just one teacher, and this is the Hamad bin Abi Sulaiman, who we mentioned earlier, and he stays with him year after year until Hamad gives him ijazah, gives him permission to give fatwa. So he's mainly in Kufa, the disciple of Hamad, but he makes the Hajj many times. Some of the hagiographic works will say he made Hajj more than 50 times. We don't really know that. Iraq was not so far from Mecca and Medina, and the scholars would study as they went. They would ride camels side by side and exchange views and carry their books with them. So it was just another way of studying. But in any case, he goes to the Hajj many times and spends some time in Mecca and Medina, and in the holy cities he's associating with other ulama. And he spends time with people of fiqh, and particularly those who had been the pupils of the muftis amongst the Sahaba. So he says, تلقيت فقه عمر وفقه علي وفقه عبد الله بن مسعود وفقه ابن عباس عن أصحابهم. I learned the fiqh of Umar and the fiqh of Ali and the fiqh of Abdullah bin Mas'ud and the fiqh of Ibn Abbas from their own pupils. And he continues like this until about the age of 40, when his teacher Hamad dies, and then he sits in Hamad's mosque in Kufa, and he has ijazah now to give fatwa, and he gives fiqh and he gives fatwas, and becomes really, really respected and famous throughout the Islamic world. Also, partly because of his attachment to Allah's book, partly because of the self-transcendence that is evident in these stories about how he did business and how he justified his engaging in doctrinal disputes. Some of the great works of Islamic sainthood, Tabaqat al-Awliya, include him amongst the awliya as well. So Imam al-Sha'rani, for instance, Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani, has a whole section on Abu Hanifa, just considering him as a saint, as a wali.